Alright, let's see if I can get some sort of tutorial going on with about how to make a render for Jagged Alliance 2. And I'm first gonna try to explain a little bit about how this Blender file is and what's there, and then go through the steps of getting this run animation uh, rendered and turned into an SDI that can then be added to Jagged Alliance. So this framework is organized in a way that we have 8 cameras with uh, like a cryptomat render layers as well, and then a whole bunch of view layers for rendering the shadows in a different layers so that it can be composited into a layered sprite for logical body types. And the props themselves have their own view layers where they're organized via collections so that they can be rendered in one go, like a multiple props can be rendered in one go, and they won't interfere with each other. And I'll explain a different tutorial on how to add those view props into the file. It's a little bit tedious, but once it's done, like per prop, you can then just leave it there, and doesn't have to do anything for it. And so the main layer that we'll be on is this view layer, which deals with the base body that we'll be animating and then rendering, and specifically camera 1 on also. And so there's the mesh. You can just switch the mesh that you want to render via this global disable in renders and viewports. And so far I've only rendered base bodies into the game, but you can just by enabling this and disabling this one, so you can just, for instance, render the female body. The animations themselves should work on all these different bodies since they're the same rig behind them. And due to how the layers are, or you can enable, say, if you want to see the rifle when you're doing the animation, it should not affect the end render for the base body. Though I usually still try to keep it organized in the way that I'll disable them before I render anything in this view layer and keep them enabled only in their respective prop view layers, say prop 1 view layer, so that will have the rifle and nothing else. And I'll go a little bit about, so basically this is how I've been doing them, is that I'll create an animation. I'll have the original animation as a reference through this STI edit program, and I've just been looking at how it moves there and trying to roughly recreate this one. And the animations that we do in Blender to replace this need to have the same amount of frames, which you can check just by looking at how many frames there are in one of these views. So in here you can see it switches off at that, and since this starts at 0, so we have 12 frames. And in is the match in here, this is the amount of frames where we start and where we end that will be rendered eventually in this animation. And the rig itself is here, where you can change quite a bit of these and just move them and then select them and create keyframes for them. Was it maybe K or I is the key hotkey, and then location, rotation, and scale is the one that I've been mostly using when I do this. And I've started this usually in the way that I'll set up keyframes for all of these rig components for the first frame and the end frame, so that since I haven't found a way to save this end frame amount per animation, so this will just keep me reminded of, say, if I switch from standing rifle to sidestep, no, that's not a good example. Open door, which has 10 frames, so this I'll see straight away from here, so that okay, I'll need to adjust this if I'll switch to rendering this animation. And then we have the composition node graph, which looks kind of hairy, but I'll just show this to explain like how this works, but you don't really need to go in here, except if and when we do add like layers, props to view layers 4 and 5. There's nothing there. I haven't added anything yet, so I have just disabled these node graphs so that I don't get like empty renders or output from those, since there's nothing there every time I render. But basically this one just deals with this first one with the base body, and it just through these node groups it will output like a composite them with the shadows, and then output say the head, torso, hands and legs to their respective PNG files. And then these ones deal with the first prop on view layer, prop 1 view layer, so these will do that. Same thing, it's just all 8 cameras, and we'll have 8 views per animation frame from these for prop 1, prop 2 and prop 3. And like I said, you should not need to touch this, so it's just a good thing to know that it's there. And I'll switch back to animation. And so there's probably better tutorials on how to animate stuff, but like I said, I've just been using roughly to look at this like reference how it looks, tweaking this animation, checking how it looks, and then again tweaking it or going through them like this a little bit, and just so it looks okay. We're still losing a lot of details because this is a tiny sprite, so that it doesn't need to match perfectly to be able to be a decent one. And of course you can just create new animations from here, just new action, and then change its name to whatever you want it to be, and you just click this so that it will save this data plug even if for whatever reason there's no users for it, so that it doesn't get deleted when you save Blender file and close it. And then once I will explain this one though, because there's a couple of props that I've imported here. So you can have like several props and then put into collections, and if you want to change which one of them is visible, say here on prop 2 I have backpack and a shotgun, you can then just globally, same thing with the base body, just enable them first. Well, this is just viewport, so it'll show here, but it won't show up in the render. But then this one enable and it'll be showing up in the render. And if you don't want the backpack to be in the same sprite, disable it, and we'll render shotgun in this prop instead. And the composition node graph just takes care of the mixing with the base body, so that parts of this will not end up in the sprite where the body would actually block it in that view. So it works pretty nicely, I guess. And then assuming that this is like ready to be rendered, I have a batch script here called render animation headless, which looks like this. This is just a convenience for me because there's a problem with with this process, is that all the renders will be put to here, which is the output folder, if it ever decides to show up the damn images. But if you say render animation that's 12 frames, like this run animation, and then do it, and then decide, okay, I'm gonna switch to a rendering animation that's slower, less frames. If you just render via Blender from here, like Control F12, and rendering the animation, you will still, it won't delete anything from this output folder, so you will still have the 12 frames amount of sprites in here. And then if you make turn STI through the batch script that I have from those, it will just grab everything that's in this folder. So I made this render animation headless batch script, which basically you'll want to change these three uh, folders to where your Blender installation is, where the actual Blender file is that we are using, and then where do you want to output the renders. And then this just calls like the output direct folder and deletes any PNG files there so that it'll be empty once you render, and then just opens Blender in a without the graphical user interface and suppresses the text output and error output so that it's not horribly slow, and it'll render it and then just echo on the command line that rendering is complete. And great. Let's see if I can get that Explorer back again. So, okay, yeah, so here's one animation that I've done. It's just a huge amount of PNG files for hands and head, legs, and torso, and then the different props, which just look like this, basically. And then we still need to turn these into the SDI files, which Jagged Alliance understands, and then I've done this make SDI.batch script here for that, which looks kind of like this. And you will probably want to set the output folder here where it submits the finished SDI files. By default on GitHub, I think it's this make script SDI relative file, which would be just here and here. But I've set mine to put it straight into the Jagged Alliance installation folder where I have the development version of it. And then there are some available palette files that we can use on those to apply to the renders, because we don't necessarily want to have like a one palette file for those, and then I've created a couple of here which just to test this out basically. But if you want to add any more, add it to here. And I think what was the it's this palettes folder in make script where you want to put them in if you want to add a palette. And then offset for the frames is for cropping setting the offsets for the SDI frames, but this doesn't really change unless you go and actually in the composition node graphs go and change the size of the output renders from Blender, so probably don't need to worry about that one. And then it'll just ask for a file name for the SDI when you're creating it, and then there are certain things that the SDI program needs to know about it to be able to create it. And then it also asks a amount of frames per direction, and then uses that to calculate the range and other stuff that the SDI com.x file or program needs to be able to create the SDI. And then I have a decision tree here, so you can do like just a layer body, or create one prop, or this basic props, which is, since I've been doing just the base body and then assault rifle and I think a beret and a backpack, so I just created one here so that I don't have to select those every single time I've been creating a new SDIs for a new animation. And I have, like I said, I have some output in here, and let's see what I have. This is 10 frames. I don't know what this animation is, but that's okay. So I'll show you the make SDI, and it'll ask us to give a file name for the SDI, and so just put tutorial SDI or something, and amount of frames, and this I think was 10 frames, and then it asks this. And when you are creating a new animation, you only need to create the layered bodies once, and then you don't really need to do that anymore. And then the basic props or new props like afterwards. So when you've rendered it, say you add a new prop and render it, and you can just use these ones. But if I create the layer body, it'll automatically select the correct palette for that, and then create this shadow head uh, suffixes for those based on the file names. And then you can choose whether to quit or otherwise jump back for next choice. So usually, I've been doing the basic props and what again with just the two, which creates the assault rifle, the beret and backpack STIs, and then just zero the quit here. Oh, don't skip a spot, and then those, like I said, by default they would end up here, but mine is set to go here, and where the actual animation files then will be, which is here, and for regular mail it's here. And there's some that I've already done while I've been doing this. And then as far as adding, then that's basically it for creating the STI files. It's fairly straightforward and don't have to input the whole lot manually. And then to be able to get this actually in game though, there are a bunch of different XML files which are located in installation for Jekyll's installation folder, and then data 1.13 table data and logical body types. And I've written a forum post about tutorial on what these things actually are and how to add to them, but I guess I'll show it here as well. With just basically, I won't be adding anything in this, but I'll show you how it is. So the logical body types is you could here add another logical body type and have the cache size for it, and basically a filter saying that when it searches for the graphics, like which one it matches, and it'll use this body type first. And then the actual like info about this is in this separate XML file, so that this doesn't get cluttered so much. And this one has the like those different layers, and then like layer props. So if we have an assault rifle in hand and we are doing this animation, this is the original animation surface that we will want to replace with our newly created one, which is this one. And then this one says that if the guy has an assault rifle in hand and he's doing this animation currently, use this one instead. And then this is for the shadow layer, and then similar ones for the legs, body, hands and head, and then helmet, gun and backpack. So far are the layers. I think the layers are defined in this XML, and these are the ones that I've defined, so you can use these and of course add more if anyone ever wants to. But then to actually add the STI to the game, we go to, there's this called animation surfaces XML, which just again is separate external XML files that will be appended here via this entity type, so that this doesn't get cluttered so much. And then we have them in here are the ones that I've done for the regular mail. And no, I've just commented like which one they are. And let's see, I'll try to find the run one. Alright, here, run rifle idle. So we create those animation surfaces, and this is the name that we'll be using in this file, and the file one is this one. Just we'll put it to point to the actual file that we created. I wasn't sure what the flags do. I'm just keeping it 0, and then the struct data is should be similar to what is originally in the game. It's just basically if the guy is standing, it'll be this stand.jsd. If it's crouching, it'll be crouch, and if it's prone, it'll be, there was somewhere it should be. It's basically mprone for regular mail. And then directions need to match how many directions are in that animation. Pretty much every animation has 8 directions except hopping the fence, which only had 8 directions. And then we tell how many frames per direction there are, so these need to match the original animation. So in this case, run rifle idle, we have that's 12 frames per direction. And again, I'm not sure what the profile does, but it's worked without touching that. So we create these ones, define these ones for the head, hands, torso, legs, shadow, assault rifle, backpack, and the beret so far, and could add more like say AK type rifle once you've done it or added the prop and done the animations for that prop and create the STIs. But yeah, we'll add these and to animation surfaces, and then we have the logical body type where we'll define like when to use those. And this one basically tells when to use those. So for the shadow layer, which is just the base body's shadow, say this is just no filter, so it's a default case. We'll go like from here from like most specific one to least specific, and this is just like when there are, it just is this animation, we'll use this instead of anything different. And we'll create, like you'll have to create these for the, say the running animation, which I've been using in this. So it's here like animation surface is this one. So when we're in this animation state, and use on this layer, use this animation surface that the new for the as like a new one, and it was in here where we've actually defined what actually is that file that will be then rendered, or the STL file. And same thing for legs, body, hands, etc. And where you can find like which one these are that you want to replace is in the source code in animation control C++ file, and there you can see them in here basically, which is for regular male guy when he's walking it'll be this RGM basic walking, or if he's running it'll be here an RGM running, and similar thing for the big male and the female, which are somewhere down here, but there's a whole bunch of these. Yeah, there starts the big male guy, and so it'll be BGM walking. But on source code, when you're adding an animation, you can find what the surface name is from here, from the animation control source code, and that's pretty much it. What it takes to create an animation for Jagged Alliance via this. If there are any questions or anything like that, just shoot me a message on Discord or something, or on the Jagged Alliance forums, and I'll try to help you out. I wonder if I don't think I'm really forgetting anything, but I know this is very basic, and I'm not basic introduction on how this thing is, but that's pretty much it. Like I said, I'll make a tutorial on how to add props in here in a separate one, because, well, first of all, it's tedious, and second of all, I don't remember myself exactly how it went. I do remember it's not difficult, but tedious, and it's a little bit different for a prop that's attached to the body, say like something like in the helmet area or backpack, or the guns. The guns were a little bit different, but I'll do that later on. Hopefully this helps some of you guys who want to work on creating any new animations. And like I said, just send me a message if there's something that you want to ask.